Saturday. Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
This is fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans.
They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
For Mervis Diamond Importers, I'm Ronnie Mervis. Once again, Mervis sets the standard for jewelry. You've got to see our new collection. Straight row diamond tennis bracelets remain a favorite. They're simple and elegant. Our neck pieces are so sexy, they're almost illegal. Imagine a perfect diamond, suspended from a delicate gold chain, resting securely in the small of her throat. What a beautiful, sensuous gift. Our magnificent diamond bands will melt her heart. The Mervis diamonds are ferociously brilliant. They seem to leap out at you. The designs are daring and rare. You'll find them at one place only, Mervis. And as for earrings, Mervis proudly shows the newest diamond ear studs, dangles, hoops, and anything else you can imagine. When you really love her, show it with Mervis Diamond Jewelry, the best there is. Two philosophies unite everything at Mervis. The finest quality and legendary Mervis value. The prices are almost too good to be true. Come see for yourself. She'll thank you forever. Mervis Diamond Importers. Financing is available. Go to mervisdiamond.com. Again, that's mervisdiamond.com or call 1-800-PER-LOVE.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello everyone, you are in for a treat today. In part 1 of 2, I was joined by former Australian jockey Ron Hutchinson. Ron started riding in Australia in the 1940s, won the 2,000 Guineas on his very first ride in England in 1960, rode over 1,300 winners in Britain and many more in Australia, Ireland, across Europe and the world, including the 1,000 Guineas, St Leger, Ascot Gold Cup, the Irish 2,000 Guineas, the Australia Cup and the Italian Derby, to name just a few. Ron finished runner-up in the 1964 British Flat Jockeys Championship, behind Lester Piggott. Plus, as you will find out, he has an incredible memory. Hello, Ron. Welcome to the show. You are definitely the oldest guest at 94 to be on the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Gee, that's 94 here. It's a long time to be on this planet, I suppose. But at the moment, I'm enjoying myself. And I'm definitely trying to live till be 100. And if I get to 100, I'll be satisfied. But as a matter of fact, I only had a pacemaker put in about a month ago, and the doctor told me, he said, it's there for 10 years. It'll be good for 10 years. So that takes me up to 105. And if I get to 105, I'll be very, very happy. So that's it.
That will certainly be well worth speaking to a 100-year-old in another few years' time, Ron. But thank you very much for joining me. And we're going to look at your 37-year riding career, classic winners, Royal Ascot, the Derby, just to name a few things. But how did you first get into racing? You were born on the 14th of December, 1927, just outside Melbourne. How did you get into racing?
Oh, that's right. Well, as far back as I can remember, Steve, I'd always wanted to be a jockey, and I happened to have a school teacher when I got to the age of about 12 or 13 years of age. One of my school teachers, they had an essay on what we had to do, an essay on what we would have liked to be when we grew up. And I wrote that I would like to be a jockey. And anyway, luckily for me, at that particular time, he was friendly with an old racehorse trainer. His name was Claude Goodfellow, and he was a friend of this my teacher. So he took me to his place in Ascot Vale, and introduced me, and that I was nearly 14 at the time, and we met, and he said, I think we should have give you a sort of a trial run to see if you like whether you like working in the stables or finish. So anyway, he gave me 3 months of probation, and luckily I enjoyed every moment from the day one that I joined the stables, and I've been very happy, in ever since. So that's how I came into being racing.
So we're going back to the very early 1940s. What was it like being an apprentice?
Yeah, well, it's pretty rough. As a matter of fact, I've just said to you before, I was watching a movie, Rainbow Jacket, and the school, the little apprentices in those days used to work pretty hard. And it was the same here in Australia too. We used to, there wasn't very many home comforts, put it that way. But I enjoyed it. I got on well with everybody that I worked with, and I was very, very fortunate to have some good friends there, and I stuck it out, and so that's how I started.
You've got to remember, World War II was on at the time when you'd started as an apprentice.
Yeah. Well, actually, I can remember that. Actually, the day I started in racing stables was the day that the Japanese bombed Darwin, and that was the headline of the newspaper at that particular day. And the Japanese had bombed Darwin. So, although we didn't being so far in Melbourne, we were too far away from Darwin, and we didn't have much to do. But there was always, sort of very, in those days, my trainer, or my master at the time, Claude Goodfellow, everybody had to do some more work, and Mr. Goodfellow, he worked in one of the it was called Anglicus Meat Works, and that was a sort of a factory where all the meat that was tinned for to be sent to the soldiers, and he was in that particular sort of situation where he was one of them working for the war efforts, Yeah, so he worked at the night shift and slept at the day, and then we would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and prepare the horses. He'd come home from work and we'd go to the track, and that's how we were in those days. It was only racing 3 times a month. So in those days, there were very few race fittings, but it was good.
And you rode your first winner in 1943. You were age 16 at Mentone. What do you remember about your first winner?
Steve, I remember it very well. As a matter of fact, it was I used to ride this little mare, bay mare that was trained by an old trainer called Vic Watson, and she was only a small little bay mare, and luckily I was able to get on her, and I was only young at the time, and she won. Her name was Busybody, and I got up and won on her at Mentone. I think, if I remember, I rode several winners on her at that particular time. She was the start of my career as a jockey.
And when I read that you'd won a race at Mentone, which is just outside Melbourne, I've actually been there because I had a friend who lived in Mentone, but the course is long since closed, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that's all it's all housing now, and it was closed down. And of course, the one not very far from it, called Epsom, that was a training centre as well. It used to be a race course, but it was a training centre in my time, and that's all been closed down now, and all housing, all been taken over. So, but some very happy memories, I can tell you.
And at 17, you won the Australian Cup as an apprentice. That must have been a very big win for you at the time.
Yes, it certainly was. I can remember it very well. The animal, or the mare that I rode, was a mare called Spectre. I think she started at 33-1, and she was trained by an old trainer, a lovely old trainer called Cecil Godby. And as I was only a young boy, I was about 17, I think I was, and it was a great thrill and a great surprise, of course, being an outsider. But anyway, I thought I was Jackie Jesus, I'd say, because I'd won the Australian Cup, and that particular night, I went after the races. I went and I said to Mr. Goodfellow, could I go, because I was so chuffed with myself winning a big race like the Australian Cup. And I said, could I go home and see my mum and dad? And all of it, he said, anyway, he put his hands in his pocket and gave me, I think it was 2 or 3 pence. He said, go down to the news agent and buy the Sporting Globe, the newspaper. And he said, and go home and go to bed. So that was the celebration that I had on my first Australian Cup. So they were pretty hard bastards in those days.
By the end of the 1950s, you were one of the leading jockeys in Australia. And then in 1960, you decided to come over to ride in Ireland. Why did you come over?
Well, I got a telegram rather at around it was in November during the Melbourne Cup time here in November of 1959, and at that particular year I was the leading rider in Victoria, and so I had this telegram to ring Paddy Prendergast, trainer in Ireland. So which I did. I rang him, and he offered me the job to come to Ireland in 1960 and ride for him. He said he had a nice lot of horses, and that he would pay me a retainer, pay my expenses over there, and I would ride the horses that he had in training. So I said to my wife, I hadn't been married all that long, and I had a couple of little children. So I said to my wife, well, do you think we should go? And yes, she said, yes, go along. And off I made arrangements to go. And I was going to go over on my own, but I wasn't very happy about that. Anyway, we left our children. She came with me, and we left our children with some very good friends, Raymond and Susan. They were only very young at the time. Anyway, we arrived in Ireland in 1960. Yeah, so that was how I came to go to Ireland.
And you were 32 at the time, and I read that before you got to Paddy Prendergast, you'd almost gone on a world tour.
That's right. Well, I said, it would be the only chance I'd ever leave, with any chance of leaving Australia. And as everything was being paid for me, I decided to have a little world trip, because in those days you could buy a ticket around the world, and as long as you were going forward, you could go anywhere. So, of course, that was a great thing for me, because we set off. We went to Honolulu, and then on to San Francisco, and then over to I think we went to Las Vegas, Disneyland. We had a great time getting there. We arrived in Ireland, in Dublin, in the middle of February, and of course it was freezing cold, very, very cold. Of course, we don't have much snow over where I live here, and so I didn't appreciate riding in the cold weather in Dublin. But anyway, I was picked up by Kevin Prendergast, and a very good friend of his called Pug Mackenzie. He was a jump jockey in Australia, and they picked Norma and I up at the Dublin airport, and we took a little before we went. We were going to live on the Curragh, down on the Curragh in Kildare, and anyway, we had a little tour of Ireland. We went to Phoenix Park, and Bell was the name of Bell. Oh, Ballydoyle. Yeah. Just outside of it. They told me it was the Mooney Valley of Ireland and all that sort of thing. Anyway, we got back to Paddy Prendergast's stables around about 4:00 in the afternoon, and then we went to the stables of stable time around 5. Everybody was showing the horses were being groomed and prepared for the night. And so anyway, I met Paddy Grath for the first time, and we walked around the stables, he was showing me all the horses, and I was really so delighted to be there. He had some lovely horses and showed them all. He said, I don't start off the very season very well. He said, but he says, as soon as the weather starts to change, he said, and get warmer, he says, my horses start to come good. So I was very pleased to hear that too.
And then moving forward to the 2000 Guineas, in your first ride in England, you won a classic with Marshall. Yes,
Steve did. That was a big surprise, of course. Marshall, he was a lovely, big, strong chestnut horse, and he was an outsider as well. But I remember it very, very well. Where Norma and I went to Newmarket, we stayed at Newmarket, and I was sitting in the bar having the night before the 2000 Guineas, and a little man came up to me and introduced himself. He said he was Norman Bertie, and he trained, I think, Pinzer to win the English Derby. And anyway, he introduced himself to him. We had a nice little chat, and he said, hope you do well. He said, but he said, eventually come to England, but he said, you've come in the back door. So that was me, I suppose, being in Ireland. But anyway, the next day, of course, I went down and I was able to win the 2000 Guineas. And from that day, Steve, it probably changed my life, because everything turned out good from there on.
And you'd never ridden at the Rowley Mile before. The horse was an 18-1 outsider. You won by a head. How did you handle the dip at Newmarket?
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, I that on the morning of the race, I went down and I was walking the track, and I ran into a broadcaster, you probably know, Peter Bromley, and we walked up the track together, and he explained that where the race course were held, because in those days it was wide. It was a very wide track. It might have been 100 yards wide, and we walked up the track and we came to the beach. Now he said, you don't go, he said, until you get to the bushes. He said, and we walked past the bushes, and he said, this is it's uphill. He said, save yourself, he says, for the very last run. And of course, I drew the inside of the track, and sure enough, George Moore was on the favourite venture, one of our Prince Ali Khan's horses. He was on the outside, on the far side. Anyway, I didn't. I rode my race, and of course, I did what Peter probably had told me to do, waited until the bushes, and then I let go. And sure enough, I looked across and I didn't know whether I'd won or not anyway, but sure enough, up goes the number and my numbers in the frame. So that was a great thrill. It was a great thrill to win in my classic the first time I rode at Newmarket.
Yeah, certainly a good start to win your first classic, first ride in England. And then not long after that, you tasted success at Royal Ascot when you won the Coventry Stakes on Typhoon. What was it like to ride at Royal Ascot?
Yes, well, it was a big thrill, there was a great thrill in those days. And I did go. I rode if I remember, won the news takes on 2-year-old Paul Flora runner, because Paddy was very good with the 2-year-olds, and we had a great basket there. I think Typhoon was another. I think we might have won the Coventry Stakes.
Coventry, you won that, yeah.
Yeah, and Flora Under won the news takes. So I actually the first rides at Royal Ascot were was very exciting. There was such a, with all the Queen coming down the straight before the races and all that sort of thing. It was a great thrill, a big thrill. And that particular time around that, because I was only going to stay in Ireland until the end of November, and that was my finish of my time. But anyway, after I started, because I had a bit of success at Chester before we got to Royal Ascot, and so Paddy and I were doing pretty good. And Paddy said, would I stay on would come back for the next season, which as I was doing so well, so I decided to come back for the following year, which is 61. Yeah, so I had 2 years with Paddy Prendergast, which was most enjoyable.
If you're anything like me, you're booked and busy. From family duties and work responsibilities to catching up on your favorite shows and podcasts. Yes, like Wrestling with Freddie. With me, Freddie Prinze Jr. With all the responsibilities we have, it's always nice to have someone in your corner. That's why State Farm is there for you with your auto and home insurance needs, helping you protect the things you love and helping you save money. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today. State Farm, proud sponsor of the My Cultura Podcast Network.
And at Royal Ascot, looking through the records, you won nearly all the big races there. You know, the Coronation Stakes, the Queen Anne Stakes, the Hardwick, many of the 2-year-old races, the Ascot Gold Cup, the Hunt Cup. You won them all, really. Yeah.
I think I won the Britannia Stakes, the Hunt Cup, Cup, if I remember right, Royal Cup. You know, I had some good times at Royal Ascot right throughout. All the time I rode there, I did very, very, very well. I rode some nice horses, and some nice horses, to ride there. It was good.
And just keeping on a royal theme, you also rode some winners for the Queen as well.
Yes. As a matter of fact, my very first ride for the Queen, was one called at Lingfield, Captain Boyd Rochford. I was able to ride for him, or he asked me to ride a horse called Orbiston, which was owned by the Queen, of course, and luckily enough, it won. And then I was lucky enough to ride the Goodwood Cup winner for her on Galway, at one of the Goodwood meetings in August, which was a great thrill and yes, great honour to ride for Her Majesty.
Yeah, you said you rode for Paddy Prendergast for 1960 and 1961, and then is that when you then moved to become the retained jockey for the Duke of Norfolk stable in 62?
Yes, Steve, that's quite correct. I as I was doing pretty good in Ireland, and I was riding a few winners in England. I was being asked to go there during the week and on several occasions, and I was doing pretty good in England as well. So, one particular night I was there evening meeting at Windsor. This was in 1961, whatever it was. Anyway, and he asked the captain or Bernard Van Cutsson, a Newmarket trainer, approached me and said, "Would I like to ride for the Duke and Duchess of Norfolk for the next season?" And but on one occasion, on the occasion that I had to ride second to Scobie Breezy because he was the Duke's top jockey in those days, and I said, "Yeah, I'd love to come and be with the Duke and Duchess, and I don't mind riding second to Scobie Breezy because I always thought Scobie Breezy was one of the best jockeys I've ever seen, and I don't mind being second to him." So anyway, I accepted the job to go to the Duke and Duchess, and luckily I enjoyed myself there, and I was there for 17 years. So we had a great association.
Yeah, what was he like to ride for? What were the family like to ride for?
Oh, dear. Well, over the years, developed such a lovely association with the Duchess and the Duke and them, and we had a one, and I enjoyed every minute that I was with them, and they were wonderful to me, and John Dunlop and his wife Sue. We had a wonderful time together, and I just enjoyed being with them, and we rode to had some nice horses, of course. We're lucky that I remember the Duke when I first went there with him. He said that there was only one race in the racing calendar that we'd like to win, would be the Royal Ascot Cup, and because I think at that particular time he was the running the whole show at that particular time, and luckily, as I think it was 1974. He bred a horse called Ragstone, and I was lucky enough to be associated with his the races he wanted to win. And of course, I think if I remember in 1975, that was in June, of course, and in February or January, February, he passed away, which was so sad.
That must have been one of your biggest highlights, winning the Ascot Gold Cup.
Absolutely, Steve. Yes, lives in my memory. All these years, and it was a great thrill. And the Grace was she was delighted. I remember so well. We went back to Arundel and had a bit of a party that particular night. It was a great night. Great memories of that particular day. Yeah, wonderful.
Moving forward to 1969, you won 2 classics for Harry Ragg, who trained in Newmarket, the 1,000 Guineas and the St. Leger. What do you remember about those 2 rides?
Yes, I do. I say yes. I was here. I had a retainer with Harry, and of course his son Jeff, who was a lovely person. He was his sort of head man, and I won on. For Budgie Moller, full dress, if I remember rightly. And he was owned by Budgie Moller, one of the Hong Kong, I think, shipping people. And then the other one's Intermezzo. He was Jerry Oldham, he was such a lovely man. He owned Intermezzo. So I was very fortunate. Jeff, and at that particular day, he was sort of in charge of the stables, and we used to travel a lot to Germany and Italy and all those sort of places. Jeff was a great man to be with, and his wife Patricia. We got on very, very well, and we had some very happy times together in those countries.
Yes, I saw you won big races in Germany, and you won the Italian Derby.
Yes, I won the Italian Derby on, I can't think of the name now, Appiani, I think it was. And he won for Tezio, the big breeder, and I also won the St. Leger for the Irish St. Leger for him as well. I had and I won the German 2,000 Guineas, I remember. I can't remember the name of the horse, but anyway, yes, I did quite well in those countries. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Germany, especially because I made some very, very good friends over there. I had a very good friend Tizi von Werner. I think her husband was the secretary of the Baden-Baden race course, which was one of the best meetings in August in Germany. Yeah, then we got to had some wonderful friends there.
Now, one race you didn't manage to win was the Derby. You came third a couple of times on Kithnos in 1960, your first ride, and you were also third on Mount Athos in the 1968 Derby, which Sir Ivor won. Was that the race you really wanted to win? Well,
naturally, the English Derby was it's the race most jockeys would like to win, and fortunately, or unfortunately rather, I wasn't lucky enough to win an English Derby, my first derby, as you just mentioned, was Kithnos. He ran third, and Paddy had two in the race. Al Chaos and Scobie rode that one. I had the choice of the two horses, but I chose Kithnos because he had won the 2,000 guineas in Ireland, and I thought that he was by far the better horse. But Scobie rode Al Chaos and was able to run second. We ran second to St. Paddy, Leicester, and that was the first time that sort of we got to meet Leicester as well. And so that was my first go. And then I was riding Towser Gosden, was the name of the trainer, and he retired, and Gordon Spythe took over his stable, and I was retained by Gordon. And I was at that particular time that Charlottetown was his best 2-year-old, and I was I was retained by him, and I was due to ride him in the Derby. But however, I got beat in Lingfield Derby trial on Charlottetown. He ran third, but I was making up ground. A horse called Black Prince won the race, but I was gathering up hands over fist, but I didn't get there in time. The owner, Sir Harold Werner, wasn't very pleased with me because I got too far back. But anyway, I was sacked about a week before the English Derby, so I missed out on riding a winner in Charlottetown. And then next, of course, as you say, Mount Athos. He was owned by a great man, Sandy Struthers, and he was able to run third to Survivor. And of course, they made the film of Survivor, The Year of Survivor, which was quite a lovely film to look at. Yeah, so that was my sort of Derby stories.
Well, I've got another couple of questions about the Derby. You also rode Shirley Heights as a 2-year-old, didn't you? Yes.
Well, that's right. I rode her. But unfortunately, I retired in England. So 1977, I retired in England at that particular bit. Grace said that she was retiring and wasn't going to take much more interest, and she was going to lease the stables to John, and she was sort of backing off being interested in racing. So I thought, well, if she's going to retire, I'll retire as well. So that was mine. I didn't carry on for the next year, but that year I rode a horse, Balmerino, in 1977 in the Arc, and he ran second in the Arc, the Triumph, and the New Zealand Owners Association, they invited me to go to New Zealand to ride in New Zealand and go and do some sort of seminars around Auckland and Elderslie and those places, a little bit of a talk. And so they invited me and my family out to New Zealand for that particular Christmas, and which I enjoyed. I was there for about 6 weeks. But on my way back, I happened to stop in at call into Singapore, and I had a few rides there, and I think I went over the 4 days of racing. I think I remember I ran about 8 or 9 races, and as I retired in England, that was what I did. I was going back to retire, and Ivan Allen, who was one of the trainers in Singapore, he said to me, well, you're retired in England. He said, I'll sponsor you, and out here, he said, you can finish for 12 months out here for a while. And so I said to my wife, I've got nothing else. No, if I go back, I'm not going to do much back in England. I'll stay and ride for Ivan. Anyway, of course, I put him to rights, but I became, instead of riding for Ivan, I became the club jockey. And so that meant that I was able to ride for any trainer who I chose or who wanted me to ride. And I finished up being the champion jockey of Singapore at that particular time. So I had a good time. I stayed there for about 3 years, and I finished about in 1981, I think it was, when I finally retired. But I started to get hip problems. My joints and hips, they were giving me some. I was getting a lot of aches and pains in my groin area, and I was finding it difficult to sort of stretch my legs, that sort of thing. So in I think it was I was 53 years of age when I decided to give it away because I was under a bit of pain, and I decided to give it away. And I was 53 years of age, and I had my first hip operation in 53. So when I was 53, so I had a good season, put it that way.
You did, yeah. I just wanted, you've gone well ahead of me there. I wanted to ask you a couple more questions about individuals, and going back to the Derby in 1962, you rode a horse called Silver Cloud, and that was the Derby when 7 horses fell. What do you remember about that particular race?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we Silver Cloud, known by a man called Jack Jarvis, trained it, and owned by I think a trainer, an owner, Tom Blackwell. Yes, we had this nasty fall about. Luckily, I didn't get hurt or anything like that, but it was an answer. I can't recall very much of the race, but it was several of us fell anyway.
In part 2, coming up next week, Ron reflected on his long riding career, the great jockeys he rode against, including his friend, fellow Aussie Scobie Breesley, the great horses he rode against, and the challenges of riding in Britain. Ron also revealed what he considered to be the best horse he rode. Here's a short clip.
Well, Goodwood, for instance, is a wonderful track, up and hill and down Dale, and Brighton, of course, and those, and everything is different over in England. They're wide open tracks, and of course, I can remember riding in Ali Pally around just in London. That was what a unique sort of track that was, to ride on.
Thank you for listening to The Paddock and the Pavilion. You can download the show on Apple Podcasts,
Amazon Music,
SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Spotify.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Pad and Pav. Don't forget, if you like the show, please do leave us a rating and review.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
For Mervis Diamond Importers, I'm Ronnie Mervis. Nothing will flatter her more than Mervis Diamond ear studs. She'll wear them every day. It's the one essential she'll never take off. Mervis Diamond ear studs are classic. They're the ideal accessory. Our studs are brighter and flash more. That's my guarantee. It's the world-famous Mervis quality which creates that blaze of light. Mervis diamonds are so brilliant, it's rude not to stare. Mervis proudly shows the most diamond ear studs. We offer all sizes and prices. Starting at just $500 for gorgeous half carats, our unrivaled collection includes studs from modest to truly grand. The amazing thing is the Mervis value, which makes our diamond ear studs so affordable. For the rest of time, you can trade up your Mervis diamond ear studs for larger, and we'll apply the full purchase price. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Just bring your studs back whenever you're in the mood and keep moving up. All you pay is the difference. Mervis Diamond Importers. For diamond ear studs she can't live without. Financing is available. For stores, go to mervisdiamond.com. Again, that's mervisdiamond.com or call 1-800-HER-LOVE.